The problem with being a famous person is that while you attract a lot of fans, some of those fans can be complete nutters. And rival famous people who have beef with each other can often result in their own fans all attacking each other. Like Nicki Minaj versus Cardi B, Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, BTS versus heterosexuality. These feuds can very often get very, very ugly and result in a right mess. But it's not very often that the crazed fan of a famous person tries to take out that famous person's rival. But one of the very few occasions where someone tried to do just that was actually caught on live TV. And it happened in a stadium right in front of thousands of people. Monica Seles. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. Today's sponsor is me. So if everybody could go and subscribe to the Patreon, or you can subscribe to the Subscribestar, and if you have a high enough tier, you can actually get your name mentioned at the end of videos, or if you're on a really high tier because you're rich and everyone hates you, you can actually get updated of what the video subjects are for that coming month. Also, there's a bunch of other stuff that you get in there as well that I can't be bothered remembering, but people seem to like it, so go sign up for that. Also, you can go and follow me on Twitter, and I apologise for my behaviour on there in advance. There's a bunch of other links down below, like there's a TikTok, there's a bunch of other stuff, there's merch, there's a lot of stuff that I don't shout out enough as well, like my second channel. A lot of people aren't aware that I actually have a whole other second channel where I usually do about 2 uploads a day, or at least I try to do at least 2 uploads a day, but basically there's a bunch of links in the description box down below that I would like you to all go and subscribe to. So yeah, go and do that. Born in Novi Sad, so called because it was in Yugoslavia, Monica Seles started playing tennis at the tender age of 6, after showing an unusual amount of potential while playing with her dad's racket. Her secret was just whacking the balls as hard as she possibly could. From then on, Carolee Seles served as Monica's coach for much of her career. And as a cartoonist by trade, he would keep the little girl's attention by drawing Jerry of Mouse fame on the balls so that she could pretend to be Tom and stop him from escaping. The idiot had clearly never actually watched the cartoon, but the strategy still worked wonders because little Monica was winning tournaments left and right before she even knew how the scoring even worked. She just kept hitting that ball until she won. As a child prodigy, Seles became the best junior player in Yugoslavia at the age of just 8. She then won her first major tournament, the Junior Orange Bowl International Tennis Championship, all the way over in Miami at the age of just 11. The following year, the whole family moved to Florida so that Seles could train at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy. Impressed, the eponymous coach said of Seles' work ethic, "She will not accept that she can't do something. And she will spend 40, 50, 70 hours working just to get one shot. I used to tell her, your boyfriend is your Prince ball machine." She spent so much time with the thing. I find it very difficult to pick out any weakness in her game. Seles' sheer power led to the manifestation of a certain quirk that quickly became infamous, as it later proved influential. In her own words, "I grunted since I was age 7. I was just a little girl and they didn't have kids' rackets in those days. So my dad gave me his racket to play with. But I was tiny, so I put all of my energy into it. Just the same way I played with 2 hands from both sides because I had to. It wasn't an issue until I became number 1, and then the competitors, who always try to find a little edge, started to complain. Because at the end of the day, it was a super competitive industry. Yeah, Seles' iconic loud grunting actually really annoyed opponents and umpires alike, for both being a distraction and also for not being in keeping with prim and proper tennis culture. And they did have a little bit of a point, because Seles' grunt was actually recorded at 93.2 decibels. Loud enough to actually cause hearing damage if prolonged, and about as loud as power tools and lawnmowers. Equally loud were dirty tabloid smear merchants like Peter Ustinov, who got way the fuck out of line by quipping, "I pity Monica's neighbours on her wedding night." Now, that would be a rather funny joke if it wasn't for the fact that at this time when he said that, she was a young teenager. You fucking creep. Despite such distasteful comments from tabloid rags and the general pressures of serious competition, Seles notably maintained a really bright personality, which was compared to, quote, the giddy teenager at her first wedding reception on her third glass of champagne. She was bubbly, giggly, and regularly changing hairstyles. Seles was just having fun on the court as she absolutely demolished the competition with her highly aggressive playstyle. Being left-handed, she unconventionally hit forehand shots with both hands, whacking haymaker after haymaker from the back of the court, faster and more powerful than anyone else, but also with a remarkable level of precision. In 1989, a 15-year-old Seles went pro, and she claimed her first major scalp at the Italian Open final, bringing down Martina Navratilova in straight sets and only dropping 2 games. Navratilova said that it was like getting run over by a truck. The next year, Seles became the youngest winner of the French Open, sparking a rivalry with world number 1 Steffi Graf by beating her in straight sets. And the following year, Seles overtook her. 2 more French Open wins made Seles the first woman to win the French Open 3 times in a row since 1937, and she was on track to win a 4th. Her court record was absolutely insane. Between January of 1991 and February of 1993, Seles had a win rate of 92.9%. She was on track to be the best woman that tennis had ever seen. She couldn't quite crack Wimbledon though. She actually missed it in 1991 due to injury, and she also lost in the final to Steffi Graf in 1992. After being told to shut the fuck up with the grunting and finding out the hard way that her grunting was actually a very crucial part of her game. Martial arts bros will understand. But even without any wins at Wimbledon, Seles still secured herself 8 Grand Slam titles. That is, she won 8 titles in the major tournaments that form the Grand Slam. And she held her number 1 spot for 178 weeks whilst being the youngest ever at the time. She was on top of the world. And it had been a rough and often lonely road, especially for someone so young. As she recalled, "I didn't really know what was coming. I was going out in the street and everyone is suddenly saying, 'That's the girl. You are 16 and it's happening 24 hours a day.' At 17, I didn't have many friends. In the tennis world, nobody really talked to each other. Outside of tennis, how would you stay in touch? There wasn't the internet, you just had a hotel phone. Socially, I really struggled." But ultimately, it was all worth it. Seles was winning and winning and winning. And she was winning so much that someone got tired of her winning. On the 30th of April 1993, Seles was in the quarter-final of the Hamburg Open, playing against Magdalena Malieva in front of 6,000 people. As usual, Seles was leading, with the scoreboard at 6-4 and 4-3 during a changeover in the second set. But as she was sitting at courtside, the referee called time, and Seles leaned forward for a sip of water, when suddenly, out of nowhere, she was stabbed in the back. Not figuratively. A crazed fan actually lunged out of the crowd and stabbed Seles right between the shoulder blades. The stabbing itself wasn't actually caught on camera, but you can audibly hear Monica scream when she gets stabbed. A man called Gunther Parsche had leaned over the railing in the front row of the crowd with a 9-inch kitchen knife in his hands, and according to a witness, he held the knife with both hands as he stabbed her in the back. Fortunately, because Seles had leaned forward at the moment Parsche stabbed her, he only got the knife about half an inch deep. Then Parsche sneered down at Seles as she looked up behind her. And then he went to stab her again, but this is when officials actually pounced on him and brought him to the ground, while the umpire rushed over to get ice and a towel for Seles. Now, when I first heard about this story, I can't deny that I jumped to the exact same conclusion as many others did at the time, especially since Seles had received death threats before. But after much research, it turns out that this incident actually had nothing to do with the fact that Monica was a Serbian in the 90s. No, this turned out to be a little bit of a Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding situation, but without the collusion. Because Parsche was one, German, and two, a massive Steffi Graf fan. A bit too much of a Steffi Graf fan, because despite being a recluse who had never left his hometown in East Germany before, Parsche hated this loud teenager dethroning his queen, and he hated it so much that he decided to help Steffi get her #1 spot back by packing a bag and travelling to Hamburg just to stab her rival. What, are you surprised? You think German autism has never led to things being taken too far before? So, for having the absolute gall to be better at tennis than Steffi Graf, Seles was very nearly paralysed. Fortunately, she was saved by the fact that she had leaned forward for her water when the knife came down. So the knife missed her spine by mere millimetres. According to Dr. Peter Wind, she was very lucky. Neither the lungs nor shoulder blades were affected. Monica is still suffering from shock and will stay overnight for observation. Seles was briefly visited by Steffi Graf in the hospital, but it wasn't much of a bonding experience. They were always rivals, but they were never really friends. After surgery and a few months of back pain, Seles made a full physical recovery. But sadly, the psychological recovery took a lot longer. Not at all helped by the fact that her tennis career, the only thing she had ever really done with her life, the only thing that she had known, had now been completely derailed. Being a lonely and cutthroat field, the tennis world certainly didn't help as Seles recovered. Other players actually kicked up a fuss at the idea of letting her hold or even share her #1 ranking until she got back, which wasn't appreciated by Women's Tennis Association President Martina Navratilova when she said, "What's frustrating to me is that the players benefited the most from Monica's absence. Because they won more money, they won more Grand Slams because she wasn't around. And they're not willing to give back to her perhaps what they gained from her absence." And a lot was gained from Seles' absence from the #1 spot. It's needless to say that Seles' recovery left her with a lot of catching up to do. As she lamented, "I had grown up on a tennis court. It was where I felt most safe, most secure. And that day, everything was taken away from me. My innocence, my rankings, all my income, endorsements, they were all cancelled." Such a hard lot would be more than enough to leave anyone depressed, but what made it even worse was the fact that the attack had left Seles afraid of returning to a tennis court. All in all, she, quote, "felt empty and damaged inside. All I wanted to do was stuff myself with empty and damaging food." Seles had been brought so low that she developed a binge eating disorder, and she had to be treated for PTSD. And what justice was Parsche served for doing this to her? Fucking nothing. Pache showed absolutely no remorse whatsoever, and he really thought that he had done Steffi Graf a favour by stabbing Seles. Though he did say that he just wanted to hurt Seles and teach her a lesson, but had no intention of killing her. So that's nice, but also, considering what Seles was going through at the time of the trial, Pache somehow managed to get even crueler by saying that she was, and I quote, not pretty. Women shouldn't be thin as bone. And conversely, Pache also described Graf as having eyes like diamonds and hair like silk, claiming that she had been sent down by heaven. He was such a fucking parasocial simp that he actually sent her notes and flowers, complained that her losses made him suicidal, and also wrote threatening letters to her critics in the press. That October, Pache was convicted of causing grievous bodily injury and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Suspended. In other words, he pretty much completely got away with it. Not only that, but he got away with it twice because the sentence was fucking upheld upon the retrial, which was held in the wake of the public outrage over the first sentence because it was so fucking lenient. But it's okay for him to suffer no consequences for stabbing people because he was ruled psychologically unstable. Oh, the precious little psycho didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't help it. What the fuck is wrong with Germans? Seles was, very rightfully so if you ask me, so fucking furious about this verdict that she never competed in Germany ever again. Absolutely seething because, and I quote, Mr. Pache has admitted that he stalked me, then he stabbed me once and attempted to stab me a second time. And now the court has said that he does not have to go to jail for this premeditated crime. He gets to go back to his life. But I can't because I'm still recovering from this attack, which could have killed me. Eventually, the fucker ended up dying in a nursing home after a series of strokes and died in 2022. 29 years later than he should have. Womp womp. For their part, the WTA actually stepped up security and moved player seating away from the stands and let them hang out with the umpire instead. However, these steps clearly weren't enough because the court gets invaded all the fucking time. Even in matches involving huge names like Nadal, Federer and Williams. If even they can't get good enough security, then what the fuck is going on? As recently as this year, Emma Raducanu had to put up with a stalker at the Dubai Open, resulting in a restraining order. But back to Seles. While partaking in the average American diet at the lowest point in her life, she became a US citizen and certified Florida woman on the 16th of March 1994. Meanwhile, world number one Steffi Graf seemed to actually rather miss Seles, because the sport just wasn't the same without her. Graf even admitted that, and I quote, I need a challenge. I'm looking forward to her return. And she didn't complain about the idea of sharing the number one spot with Seles in her absence. However, she did take issue with Seles' ranking not being determined by the standard minimum of 12 annual tournaments, citing an unfair advantage. To be fair, the circumstances are tragic, but what can you really do? Whether Seles' fault or not, injuries happen. And while a far greater or even any degree of solidarity was certainly warranted, as Mary Carrillo put it, I don't think you put a sport on hold for 2.5 years, even if it is something as horrendous as a stabbing. I honestly think Monica will play so well so quickly, she'll render the whole issue moot. And that Seles did. At first. She returned victorious at the Canadian Open in August of 1995. Heavier than she used to be, but still in good shape with a hard-earned victory. In her time away, she'd also grown 2 inches taller, which she said helped her with her serve. And the best part is that the win seemed to give Seles a massive boost, when she said, when I thought of coming back, I had no idea how I would feel sitting back down on the chair, knowing that the person who had stabbed me had never been put in jail. There were so many ifs. In the end though, after 2.5 years, I felt I just had to try. I came back in Toronto and the fan support was just amazing. I won that first tournament back and that helped. I was like, I'm still pretty good at this. Sadly, despite the good start, Seles never managed to return to the form that she was on before the attack, soon losing the US Open final to Steffi Graf. Seles' aura and boldness just weren't the same, and Seles wasn't so smiley or giggly anymore either. However, she had more support than ever from a sympathetic crowd that even caught on with opponents like Lindsay Davenport, who said that a part of me wants to see Monica win, and I'm the one who has to play her. And that Seles did, because she was still up there with the best of them. In January of 1996, she won the Australian Open for the 4th time, securing her 9th major title, and she came in 5th at the Atlanta Olympics. Sadly, this was not the end of Seles' hardship. In 1998, her father and coach, Carolee, died of stomach cancer. In his honour, she dressed in black and wore his wedding ring around her neck all the way to the final of the French Open. Naturally, the loss was devastating, and Seles did feel less connected to professional tennis without her stalwart coach. But, now older and wiser, she coped by turning to writing instead of food, which helped her a lot. What also helped is that by this stage in her career, Seles had taken on a much more down-to-earth persona and was being approached by fans a lot more, who told her their own stories about similar struggles. For this, Seles seemed grateful, saying, "It helps, I know I'm not by myself." After all she'd been through, Seles really managed to come to terms with where she was in her career, when she said, "I made a lot less unforced errors then than I do now. Even in those times, I had tough matches, but it's hard to go back. At this point, I don't want to go back. I just want to think about improving for the next match." It's a great and hard-learned attitude to have, especially after all the work she'd put in through a number of serious issues to get her place on the circuit back. And from 1998 to 2002, that place was on the Yanks Federation Cup team, where she aided them to victory in 1999 and the year 2000. But the ups and downs continued as Seles was absolutely demolished in Miami by Martina Hingis in the year 2000, not conceding a single game. When asked why she didn't offer Seles the dignity and mercy of letting her win a game or two, Hingis simply asked, "Think Monica would have done any different in her prime?" Which is a fair point. But on the bright side, Seles also won Olympic bronze in Sydney that very same year, and made it to 3 major quarterfinals. Seles did not spend her later career as the firebrand that she used to be, but she settled into a much more normal and open persona. In a strange way, Seles was at her most popular when she wasn't on top of the world. Her personal struggles made her a lot more relatable to her fans, and while she wasn't winning as much or being anywhere near as dominant as she used to be, she had one up on her opponents by having overcome a lot worse than just a few tennis tournaments. Sadly, Seles was taken out of tennis by a foot injury in 2003, and she never played professionally again. After the odd exhibition match over the years, Seles officially announced her retirement on the 14th of February 2008. She didn't seem too torn up about it though. The following month, she went on Dancing with the Stars, and she was eliminated in the very first round, but apparently she had a lot of fun, so good for her. But also, fucking hell, man, after everything that she's been through, you could have at least kept her in for a couple more rounds. Fucking brutal, man. Fuck's sake. Sure, Seles' career had a very sad end, and it left everybody wondering what could have been. But it was still no career to be sniffed at, all things considered. With a win-loss ratio of 595 to 122, 53 singles and 6 doubles titles, and 9 Grand Slam titles, which was the 8th highest at the time of her retirement. On Seles also had about $15 million in prize money. All of this earned Seles her place in the Tennis Hall of Fame in 2009, where she gave a very nice speech thanking everyone for supporting her throughout her career, even giving her trademark grunt one last time.
And for once and for all, I will say that it was never done intentionally. So I will try to do a grunt here, but it won't be like the original grunt. So for all good old time's sakes, here it is.
In September of 2013, she was also honoured at the US Open Court of Champions. Nowadays, Seles spends her time on mental health advocacy, particularly regarding eating disorders, in addition to motivational speaking. She's also published a memoir and has proved to be very influential in the tennis world to this day, especially on the likes of the Williams sisters and Maria Sharapova. And much to the joy of boomer dads, her grunting has caught on pretty widely. But while Seles' legacy and mark on the tennis world are more than secure, it's still hard not to think about how much more she could have achieved. In her time away, Seles missed 10 major championships and she would have most likely won most of them. And then factor in Seles coming back in diminished shape from years off of the court and big blows to her psyche. As sports journalist Chuck Culpepper put it, and the top players of the last 25 years are Graf with 22 slams, Serena Williams with 15 slams, and Seles. That's because I know her 9 was bigger than 9. I know the wretched reason it stopped at 9. And I don't accept as merit, or even as accidental fate, the wretched reason it stopped at 9. Ultimately, I think it's a much better idea to focus on what Seles did do rather than what she didn't do. Despite his best efforts, that loser Parshay couldn't take the fact that she was one of the best tennis players in history away from her. And neither should we by looking back on her career so sadly. It's very easy to ask, what if until the cows come home, but Seles seems to be doing well now. And that's what matters.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody just subscribe.